areas of disagreement. It's a lot easier to find common ground. So here's something that I think every American agrees on. Maybe not totally true, but generally true. We share the same goal. We all want a prosperous America. I'm concerned about every American. Quite honestly, I'm concerned about every human being. We all want every American to have the opportunity to build a good life for themselves and their family. Now, I'll be the first to admit, we have a wide diversity of opinion in terms of how to achieve that prosperity. How do you provide those types of opportunities? And by the way, it's not government that provides the opportunities. It's government getting out of the way so those opportunities can spring out of the passion of people who want to build things, out of the freedom that our founding fathers recognized were the foundational premise of this nation. So if you start the conversation that way, I've certainly found it, as people that I know don't particularly like me, certainly don't agree with my views, they come into my Senate office or sit in an audience, it can be pretty disarming for them, and they realize, I thought this guy was really a jerk. I thought this guy was just greedy, money-grubbing, self-absorbed, self-interested individual. That's unfortunately how the other side views conservatives and Republicans. It's utterly false. I mean, I think it's been pretty well documented. Conservatives are the most generous when it comes to being donors. That's just true. We actually do care about our fellow man. We just have a different idea of what we should do collectively to help our fellow man. And it really does start with freedom. It's also recognition, this is something else that I bring to me, or bring to this process from my manufacturing background. As a manufacturer, it's just in your DNA to do root cause analysis. Certainly what I've been trying to do is I've traveled around not only Wisconsin but America with my kind of depressing PowerPoint presentation, is I've been trying to provide just the facts, the figures, the truth, the root cause analysis. And to me, the root cause really is the size, the scope, all the rules, all the regulation, all the government's control and intrusion into our lives, the resulting cost and debt of government. There's the root cause. If you want to talk about poverty, which I talk about at the tail end of my presentation when I throw up out-of-wedlock birth rates, showing how that very dangerous societal metric had doubled from 1940 to 1965, and then collectively, America embarked, because we're a compassionate society, on a $16 trillion war on poverty. Then ask the question, well, did it work? No. Unfortunately, it didn't. And I mean that. Unfortunately, it didn't. Today, out-of-wedlock birth rates overall society-wise is 41%. That's a dangerous metric. That's not a metric of success of the war on poverty. That's a success of utter failure. Now, I've always talked about, let's face it, folks, I see the opinion polls, congressional approval rating at 13%. First of all, it's too high. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's too high. But it's also pretty indicative, I think, of the American public's perception of Washington, D.C., right? So here's what baffles me. You've got 90% of the American public looking at Washington, D.C. as being totally dysfunctional, totally broken, ineffective, inefficient, and yet we have a majority of Americans consistently electing people, like Senator Tammy Baldwin, President Barack Obama, who are absolutely dedicated to growing that dysfunctional place. I mean, that is utter madness. But it creates an opportunity for us. As we talk to those individuals, let them know that we share the same goal, and that the solution does not lie in Washington, D.C. I mean, come on. Believe what your eyes and ears are telling you. It is that dysfunctional. And then ask yourself a pretty simple question. Ask your friends and family and neighbors, the people who disagree with you, this very simple question. Do you think it's dysfunctional? It is. Do you really want the federal government then to continue to grow? Do you want its influence, its control, its intrusion into your lives? Do you want that to increase? Do you really want the federal government taking over your healthcare system? No. Being involved in life and death healthcare decisions? I think that is a monumentally bad idea. I think you think that's a monumentally bad idea. We got to convince at least 50% of Americans and Wisconsinites that's a really bad idea. That's what we got to do. Now, one way of doing it is to start talking about these problems, showing up, showing concern. Romney got slaughtered on the fourth attribute that people were voting on for president. Does he care about somebody like me? If Americans of Wisconsinites don't believe that we care about people like them, they're not even going to listen to us. They're not even going to give us a chance. So that's the first hurdle we have to overcome. But then once we start talking about poverty, once we start talking about that root cause, here's a suggestion. Again, I don't believe the solution lies in Washington. I believe it lies here with individuals, with our faith, with our family, in our communities. And we had Arthur Brooks speak to our Republican retreat a couple weeks ago. He had the same basic litany. It was a pretty interesting construct, and I want to lay it out here for you. He was talking about poverty. I mean, let's face it, I mean, we all judge or rate or assign poverty based on a dollar value. I mean, how much income do you? Okay, so dollar value poverty. Well, that's a valid measurement, but that's not the cause of poverty. That's not truly what we should be talking about when we talk about poverty. What Arthur Brooks talked about is what causes the dollar value poverty. What drives it is a poverty of faith, a poverty within our families, a poverty within our communities and involvement in our communities. And then he added this fourth element, which I thought was pretty interesting and pretty relevant as we hear about the very destructive policies of, cause effect of Obamacare, a poverty of work. I mean, when we have the CBO issue that study that says because of the subsidies, because of the incentives within Obamacare, and let's face it, those are incentives that are created across all of our social welfare programs, the incentive not to work. What could be more destructive of the human spirit than we start telling people, hey, we're going to free you from the shackles, the bonds of having to work for a living. As my kids were growing up, the point I always made to them is the goal in life is to be happy. Sounds pretty simple, huh? In our Declaration of Independence, what is one of those inalienable rights endowed upon us by our Creator? The pursuit of happiness. That is no trivial thing. And let's face it, the only way you achieve true happiness isn't by getting a welfare check. Is not becoming a dependent of the federal government or the state government. The way you achieve true happiness is by being able to achieve yourself. I happen to grow up with two parents that instilled in me faith, but also instilled in me the basic notion that probably the greatest compliment you could ever pay another human being, no matter what that other individual did, no matter their station in life, was just say, boy, there's a really hard worker. That's the way we used to think in this country. Now we've got political opposition that is taking a look at a CBO study and saying, hey, this is great. People aren't job locked anymore. Now people can aspire to be, artists and all kinds of things. I mean, that's fine. I employ artists. I like them. It's great. But somebody's got to pay for that art. Somebody's got to pay for the social safety net that we all actually do value, that we do want to construct. People need to understand these things. We've got to get back to understanding what really causes poverty. We got to get back to really analyzing how all of our great intentions, and they've been wonderful intentions on the part of the federal government, the incredibly negative and harmful and destructive unintended consequences of federal government action.